Good afternoon. This is Veterans Talk. It ain't nothing but a thing, but it's a thing we want you tuned into every Saturday afternoon. I'm your host, Elsa McGee, and we're here today doing the same thing we've been trying to do ever since we started the show, trying to make sense out of a sensitive situation called the plight of veterans in the USA and the USA with the plight of veterans. How are we dealing with all of this stuff when only 1% of the population ever served in the U.S. military? And the truth of the matter is less than 5% of that demographic ever use the VA, other than probably home loans. But we got problems all over the United States right now. Any given day, more than 200,000 veterans are homeless in the USA. I come from one of the fastest dying generations veterans ever. This Vietnam era, being exposed to toxics and Agent Orange. More of my peers have died from Agent Orange related illness than actually were killed in the war. We got burn pits all down through the generation. That's the way we dispose of waste in the military. Finally, the Congress, the most recent Congress, we would say, have approved the PAC Act, which covers more expansion of VA concerns. Let me say concerns because we left out a lot of the Georgia veterans, especially, didn't get what they do from this bill. And that's those that was at Fort Gordon, Georgia, which was exposed to Agent Orange and still got some exposures going on there, but it was left out of the PAC Act. Camp Lejeune, we got a lot of Marines. 2 weeks ago we celebrated the Marines' birthday right here on Veterans Talk. We saw and we heard about the Mumford Point Marines and some educational things that I didn't really know about the Marines. Well, I don't know a lot of things about military service, but I know one thing. Without the military, we would not have the freedoms that we have in this country today to grow. I can remember when I left home from Atlanta, Georgia in 1967, going into the military, there were no African Americans. Come on, Tony. There was no African Americans in city government. None. I'm sitting up here today, and it's just because this is my hometown. This is the town I was born in, and this is the town I'm gonna die in. I'm so proud of my city, and I'm proud of now the new generation of elected officials that we got in the city. So, got one of my brothers here today, and I'm just gonna let him introduce himself and talk for a minute because we're gonna talk on to death, Tony.
Well, I appreciate you, Reverend McGee, and I just want to say thank you for inviting me to the show. And it really means a lot to be able to speak with you and speak with our earlier generations of veterans, because I think it's so important to bridge the gap between generations. As you had said before, I'm a newer member of the Atlanta City Council. Yes. I'm Jason Dozier, for those of y'all out there. I represent District 4 on the City Council. I like to describe District 4 as Central Southwest Atlanta, so for everything from 5 Points to Fort McPherson. Mm-hmm. And before I joined the City Council many years ago, so I grew up in South DeKalb. I consider myself an Atlanta native. I was born at what used to be Georgia Baptist Hospital, but I grew up just outside of the city limits in South DeKalb off Farrington Road. And I left, growing up in a community that was lacking, for lack of a better way to describe it. I felt I had to get out of Georgia to get my education. I wanted to see something different, do something different, and ended up going to college up north in Ohio. My freshman year of college, 9/11 happened. And that was what put the bug in me that, maybe I want to do something bigger than myself. Didn't know what that was or how that would manifest itself. But I went to school to be a teacher. One of the biggest influences of my life was my high school history teacher, and I wanted to be just like him. Well, after I got my degree and after I did my student teaching semester, I realized that was not the career for me. Teaching is hard. I'm married to an educator. I got educators all through my family, and it wasn't the career for me. And so ended up coming back home, worked in a warehouse for a year, actually, trying to figure out what I want to do. And I like to describe it as a crisis of purpose. I knew I wanted to do something bigger than myself. I had this bug that's been sitting in the back of my head since 9/11. And I decided at that point that I wanted to ended up joining the Army. And this is 2005 is when I made the decision. Ended up raising my right hand and going down the MEPS, right down the street down here at Fort Gillem, back in April of 2006. And because I had a college degree, I went in on the officer candidate school route. So ended up getting branched as an armor officer. So I thought tanks were the coolest thing you could possibly do in the Army. I thought I was going to be a tank platoon leader. And then when I got my orders, they sent me to Fort Polk, Louisiana, in the 4th Brigade of 10th Mountain Division, which is a light infantry brigade. And they don't have any tanks, so I ended up being a scout platoon leader. Led a platoon of scouts with Humvees, which aren't as cool as sexy as tanks. But I'm fortunate enough that I got to stay in the same unit for 4.5 years. I did 6 years in total. It served as a scout platoon leader in Iraq. I did a 14-month tour over there, and then was a staff officer in Afghanistan with the same unit. So a lot of my same guys, I got to go on both sides of the coin and go to both Iraq and Afghanistan with. Ended up coming back home in 2012. Decided that I've been in these places, these far-flung places on the globe that have been on this earth for 1,000 years, 2,000 years. And I'm from Atlanta, Georgia. We've only been around for 170, 180 years. Yes. So I went to grad school at the University of Georgia. Go Dogs! I know they're playing Georgia Tech today. I saw the mayor earlier today. I gave him some crap about because I know he's a Georgia Tech alum. But went to the Masters of Public Administration program, specializing in local government administration. So I like to tell people I went to bureaucrat school. I was planning on working in some dark basement somewhere, stamping documents, and I was going to make that my career. And my program requires you to do an internship as part of your graduation criteria, and an intern at a nonprofit that works with military veterans because it was one of the few paid internship opportunities at the time. So I thought, okay, I'm going to do my 3-month internship, move on and do something different. They offered me a full-time job. I was like, you know what, I'm going to do this full-time job for 6 months and go and move on to something else. And then 10 years later, I'm still there. And so I work at a national nonprofit called Hire Heroes USA, and we help veterans find jobs when they transition from the military. So if I tell somebody I was a first sergeant and a BSB, well, nobody knows. A civilian doesn't know what that means. So we teach them how to translate that. So say I led a unit of a group of 300 employees in helping run logistics for 3,000 person organization, those sorts of things to translate those skills. So been doing that work for the last 10 years. And even though I never went to go into city government professionally, I was able to use that skill set to do community work and organizing work, and became a community advocate, trying to help people stay in their homes, trying to make sure we can put an end to this flooding that has destroyed people's homes across our Southwest Atlanta communities. And that's what led me to run for city office. And ran in 2017, came close in that election, licked my wounds a little bit, decided to focus on life and family, and brought my daughter home in 2020. And I felt the urge to try to do what I could to make our city a better place. Ran again in 2021, was successful, and here I am today, continuing the good work not only locally here in the city of Atlanta, but nationally through my work with military veterans across the country.
Well, I'm going to say this before I let Tony turn Tony to something. I'm so glad to see veterans running for office because, the oath of office, I think, should be extended to government work. I mean, I work for VA. I know what it is to work for the government. And I'm going to say this, and I know a lot of civilians going to hate me for saying this, but we bring the discipline to service and government that's going to keep our democracy growing. We know how to work with different demographics. And that way, we can grow the democracy that we pledge allegiance to. I like the pledge allegiance. I want to give that to you because I know you can identify with it. I just think that sometime that we looking at how our politics work in America now, we just got a lot of people that ain't fit for service. I mean, that's already in service. And, I'm sort of a old radical. And, I want to make it my business to try to, get veterans to see this. That, listen, I know you done went through the military, and I know that wasn't no easy tour, but it equipped you to serve in the community and make our community look more like the military looked You know, we learn how to work together, live together, and grow together. And I think that's what's missing so much in our communities today. And the problems that I see evolving from that is crime. You know, just the crime in the community. And I'm a Grady baby. We didn't have these killings in our community when I was growing up. You know, I can't remember having a key coming home from Washington High because the door was always open. You know, you didn't have to worry about people breaking in your stuff because we had a sense of community. People in the community looked out for each other. And I don't think that without military service you can relate to that. And that's why it makes me excited to see veterans running for office, you know, in our governments. Because this is our government, and I think the only way we're going to save it is that veterans stepping up. So I just want to thank you for your service in the military and your service in the community. Now, Tony, you can.
well, thank you. Well, I'll just say thank you for that, and thank you for your service, and thank you for your leadership, and thank you for putting this together, because I think it's important that let folks know that, you know, you might have served in the Vietnam era, but y'all are still here. Y'all are still part of our city. Y'all are still part of our communities. Y'all have an important voice to share, and it's important that people hear that voice. So I appreciate everything that you're doing to this day.
Yeah. And what we do, Tony is big on telling people this all the time. The military do good training us to do military service, but it don't do nothing to help us do civilian life when we're coming out of the military. So I know he would be excited to know that's what you do.
Yeah, and that was going to be the topic that I was going to ask you about and everything. And to reiterate what he just said, those of us that served during Vietnam, we got incredible training for war, you know, to battle, you know, to deal with those types of things. And a lot of us, me for example, only served for 4 years and everything, and then I, you know, transitioned out of. And the point that I made, even with the Marines that were here a couple of weeks ago about Montfort Point, the military doesn't do a very good job of transitioning us from the military style of life back into the civilian style. And that has become a challenge for a lot of veterans, you know, not just the ones who are dealing with post-traumatic stress, but just the idea of moving from a very regimented society to one where, you know, you now make all of your decisions and everything. And the point that I make is we were very young and malleable. And so when we went into the military, it was very easy for them to train us to do whatever the job that we were doing and everything. But once the 4, 6, or whatever years it was over, we were just discharged, you know. And that became a challenge for a lot of us, And we weren't ready to handle that, you know.
And so I want to interject. It is a problem now, really. And until we get this nucleus developed in the community with people recognizing this and working with veterans coming out of the military, we won't even be able to identify those 22 veterans that's committed suicide. You know, we are out in the community now. Tony was down at the Church of the Redeemed just last week talking about the suicides. And, you know, that kind of lack of community engagement with veterans coming out of the community, these families are not equipped to deal with the mental issues. I know my mom looked at me and said, "This ain't what I gave. I want my son back." So she ran me to the VA. But how many parents are able to recognize that? And, you know, just my mom, just, you know, she was my mom. She wasn't going to bite her tongue when she saw me doing something that wasn't good for me. She was going to speak up. But she didn't have any knowledge of the VA. She just knew that was an entity that was there to help me. Now, what we are doing with the Sons of Atlanta is kind of incorporate some of that, because when we finished the memorial in Piedmont Park, we're going into the community centers, especially in Adamsville, you know, C.T. Martin, because that's where I used to meet, you know, before COVID. And, you know, and we got these young kids that we're going to develop a volunteer army with ROTC and a lot of retired people to work in the community centers, to provide help for people in that community with their veterans, period. Whether they in the military, coming out of the military, been out of the military, where the benefits, where the resources that will help them, we're gonna make sure that it's known in the community, because had it been known when we was coming out, it wouldn't have took. I was wounded in 1968, same year Dr. King was assassinated. I didn't get service connected for PTSD until 1984. Because we had to go through all this rigmarole to get the government to recognize that, and like it was not nationally. We serve nationally, but we live locally. So my problems is a problem for the city of Atlanta, for Fulton County, and that's where we should be interacting with government officials that understands this, because the resources are clearly there in our community to deal with this problem. So I'm just back out of it.
Well, I do want to say to the broader point that you made, this is a national security issue, right? If we don't take care of our veterans, then we're all volunteer force. So if I know that I'm not going to come out good on the other side, if I'm going to be struggling with PTSD or have suicidal ideations or can't find a job or end up on the streets, why would I raise my right hand in the first place? So it's important for not only the VA to get it right, but also for the Department of Defense to get it right. And I think what you've seen at least the last 3 or 4 years, a recognition of that connection between those two, historically considered like different silos, different buckets. Now that the Department of Defense is doing a lot more work on the transition side. So before you leave the military, now is DoD policy that you have to go what they call a Transition Assistance Program, TAP. Okay. And you have to get a resume. Now granted, the resumes you get out of TAP leave some to be desired, which is where my organization has been able to be helpful to supplement that work, to help really spell out what you did in the military in a way that makes you competitive on the civilian job market. But DoD has recognized that it's important to get the transition piece right, because of they recognize that if we can't recruit in this all volunteer force, if people don't feel like they're going to get taken care of on the other side. I think the challenge though is with any big old government bureaucracy, it takes time to figure things out. I mean, the military is efficient at what it does and effective at what it does because we've been doing it for 230 some years. But for all these other parts of our government, it takes time to figure out and understand, and especially with different political parties coming in and different budgetary priorities, it's hard. The only thing that doesn't get cut, regardless of a Democrat or a Republican, is the military, because we have our nation's wars to fight. And so that's why I've been really thankful to be really in the weeds on this work. Particularly, my organization focuses on employment, but we partner with organizations both nationally and locally around the mental health issues, around homelessness, around legal services. And, if I'm a military vet, if I know I'm a veteran, I know I served in the military, but I don't have a way to prove that. It's great that my organization partners with VEO right here in Atlanta to help our local veterans be able to navigate the VA system to get that proof of service so that they can then get access to the benefits that they're owed. But it takes time to not only really build these networks and relationships, not only here in Atlanta, but all over the country, but also it takes time to build trust within the military community, because there's a lot of veteran organizations out there, and not all of them are good. If I remember correctly, there's about 40,000 veteran serving organizations across the country, and it's tough. You separate from the military, you do what they tell you to do, and then all of a sudden there's this organization here, everybody's trying to get your GI Bill money, everybody's trying to get some part of you that you've already given a big part of yourself to the government, and so it's hard. But I think that, to your point, I think that the DoD has recognized the importance of that and is working to try to alleviate the challenges. Now, granted, we still got a long ways to go, but I think we're starting to really figure that out in a way that we should have been figured out a long time ago. The challenge, though, is that many of our military veterans, because they didn't serve in combat, because they may have served in the peacetime army in the 80s or 90s, because of the XYZ, they may not realize that they qualify for a lot of these benefits or a lot of these opportunities, and may not be willing to or recognize the sign. Like, you still get PTSD even if you never served in combat, because joining the military is a traumatic experience in its own right. You're getting uprooted and broken down and built back up, and so it's incumbent on our military leaders to be able to instill in just the culture of, hey, it's okay to seek help. It's okay to try to build and to connect in ways that you may not feel comfortable. And so I think you've seen a cultural shift in the military. I mean, I've been out for about 10 years, so I'm an outside observer at this point. I have a lot of friends that are still serving, but I think that we're a long ways from where we were 10 years ago, 20 years ago. But we still got a long ways to go.
And to that point, we are Vietnam Veterans of America. It is one of the major veteran service organizations, and we are built up with veterans. All of our members have to be veterans. We have an auxiliary where we got family members and non-veterans working within the organization. And what we're attempting to do is to use that knowledge and experience of military service to help the community engage their loved ones coming out of the military while they're in the military. Now I just want to salute my grandson, Freeman Harris, still in the military. Done made these 6 too. Okay. Tell him he make them rank faster than I do. They're getting paid good too now. So you're right. A lot of things have passed. And I went down to Fort Benning and was introduced to the heat seekers. The ammo heat seekers. I mean, now we didn't have any of that kind of stuff when we was fighting in Vietnam. It would have made it easier, but fighting, like you pointed out, and what we try to make all veterans understand, that if you was in the military and was in an accident at Fort McPherson, you got PTSD. And you could be at Fort Gordon, which Kenny was. Never went to Vietnam and was exposed to Agent Orange. So it's your military experience that we try to understand and respond to when your families see you need help. Because a lot of us, because of military regiment, we got pride. We got too much pride. I was a paratrooper, so my head was messed up. My head was clean and messed up because I thought I was invincible. I used to tell everybody that I was closest thing to Superman because we could fly. But the PTSD didn't let me fly. And my mom saw it and my dad saw it. But the rigor of the military wasn't responding to their help. So it's important that veterans do this. That we have to reach out and teach our family and our community, and then respond to our peers. Because sometimes, you had to just shake a guy and say, "Listen, man, you didn't have to be in Vietnam to get a benefit, and that benefit is not just for you; it's for your family and your community. And if you don't get it, then those entities suffer. So we have to make the idea of military service a community asset. It has to become a community asset, and we have to connect all of the dots, the VA, the Department of Defense, and the community together with the resources in the community. Now, Fulton County, through me and Tony messing with Rob Pitts and knowing we had Marvin on our side, we got them to set up a veteran service program, which they put $1 million in the community this year. Now, next year, they're going to put another $1 million, but we got to have some impact. We got to make sure that those people that's getting these funds to address these issues are actually doing that. And then we have to look at the city, the state, and the county resources that's being wasted. We got more right now in the city of Atlanta, vacant space with the lights on and the water running than we have homeless people. Why do we have our peoples up under the bridge when we got these resources just sitting there? So we need veterans in politics. We need veterans that's elected to office so they can see how this democracy is supposed to work. In the military, you went to do your job. You did it like that, with that oath in mind. You know, you didn't deviate from them, because you did, you got a bad discharge. You know, or you would have got an Article 15, they started taking the little money they were paying. So we need to have that kind of experience come to the community in our governments, because we have enough resources. I mean, the state of Georgia, now just they got a $7 billion resource, and they got people up under the bridge, and they talking about how well Georgia is doing. That's not doing well from a moral perspective. You know, we got these resources. Yeah, government is gonna save money, but what about saving the people? You know, so we're delighted to see veterans. And what I want to be able to do is to encourage that all across the country, not just in my hometown, but I know that anybody that finishes a good tour of military service is going to be a good employee, whether it's in the government or in business. So,
you said a couple of things that I want to touch on, because I think it's important that you shared that. I'll start with the latter point first, which is that veterans have so much to offer our city. And I hate that a lot of our veteran hiring initiatives are, you know, Atlanta Police Department needs more officers, or Atlanta Fire needs more firefighters. Veterans offer more than just public safety. We can do more than just arrest people. We can do more than just put out fires. Veterans are your human resource specialists. Veterans are your admin clerics. Veterans are your logisticians. Veterans are your transportation specialists. And so, to me, we should have veterans working in every department at City Hall doing all these sorts of jobs, because even if the job that I'm doing for the city may not be the exact same job I did in the military, there's a skill state that you were given in terms of being on time, being early, and being able to organize things, organize people. Like, all those things are valuable for a city like Atlanta. And I've been I know we have a new HR commissioner, but that's the first thing I told her the first day she came to City Hall, was that I appreciate that APD is doing all this work to try to recruit veterans, and I appreciate all this work that other like fire department and so forth and so on. But we ought to be recruiting, because we need city employees. We have a shortage of city employees in every department. And so we need to be. Fort Benning's down the street. Fort Gordon's down the street. Fort Gillum's down the street. You got Warner Robins. Like, all these different. Like, Georgia's the 4th largest veteran population in the country. Like, Atlanta should be home for Georgia's veterans. And the best way to do that is for the city to lead by example on that front. And I want to make sure that we can get to that point.
And I want to say this for the sake of that we got a lot of veteran employees in the city, and I'm in a whole total agreement with you, because we just make better employees. The discipline that we developed, and I say develop because I had discipline when I went into the military, because my folks were,
hands on.
So, but to have that kind of employee in our governments is critical to me, because right now we see people in government spending so much and wasting so much of the resources of government. Then they won't direct the resources of government to the problems in our community, and that's the problem. That's the problem.
Well, and the other piece too that you had mentioned before is that there's a lot of programs out there for veterans, but not every veteran's in receipt of those programs. One example I think of, in my district, we got a lot of seniors who can't afford repairs on their homes, and so I've been working with an organization called House Proud.
House Pride.
They do a lot of great work,
yes,
but they have a big old wait list.
Yeah.
But you know what they don't have a big old wait list for veterans, and part of the problem is identifying veterans, because, like I said before, sometimes folks are unwilling to share that they're veterans. Folks are unwilling to. So we want to make sure we, as our city council office, we can fill that gap. So every form that we have people fill out, we ask, did you serve in the U.S. military at any given time? Because we want to have a database of veterans in our community, so we can push these resources towards them, because they're not asking for it when you go down to the Department of Driver Services.
No.
They're not asking for it when you are fill out paperwork on your water bill. And so, all these resources are available, but we're not able to get them to the people that need that could use them, because we don't do a good enough job of identifying that population. And I think the city can do a much bigger, better job. And then I've shared the same thing even with my Democratic Party organizing. It's like, every year, every election cycle, are like, hey, how do we get veterans and veteran families to come to the table and to speak on a candidate's behalf and out there at Fort Stewart or Fort Gordon, and we're rebuilding we're reinventing the wheel every cycle. Well, if you ask people up front when they sign up to donate or sign up to volunteer, did you serve in the military, you can build that network of veterans and you can lean on that so that you don't have to try to start from scratch every time. We should do that as a city. We should do that as a city council office. And I'm hopeful that the more we make that into a best practice, ask the question up front, did you serve in the military? That will make it easier for us to get the resources to people that really need it.
And I'm glad you said that, because I gave you some stuff. The first question that we asked, do veterans vote matter? And that's the veterans, right? It had to matter to us before it mattered to anybody else. So what we've been doing is going out, connecting those organizations together. And I'm just proud of House Pride people, because they were one of the entities that got some of those Fulton County funds. I just want to make sure they get more this year,
right?
Because these funds are there, and now Marvin and Rob Pitts is committed to making this project work. So we want to, Tony and I, we're going to knock on doors and just making sure, because both of us sit on the commission. We advocated for it, so we were the first guys that they appointed. But now we're trying to get the appointments throughout Fulton County, because we got some people on that commission that they got different
challenges.
But that we have that on every level of organization in our community. But we got to be able to deal with it the way we dealt with being in the military. We was able to deal with differences and with respect. Respecting each other's differences and your cultures, and still working together. It wasn't that we didn't have scrimmages, but we didn't have scrimmages so bad that we didn't perform our jobs. And I think we are able to do that when we get all these organizations together that's in the community working for this. We're supposed to be working together. So we go out and we pulling them together and telling them, listen, we got the same problem. We don't care what color your skin is. You got to not bring that to the community now. You done went through an experience in the military where you know how to deal with all people. And we can all get along. We can all work together. And you can see it in the military today. It is the best, it's the most diverse, best functioning part of the federal government. I don't care what nobody says. I'm looking at the Congress and all the other departments of federal government. If you want to see how the government is supposed to function, look at the military. If we can get all the other entities in our community function like that, crime would be a minor problem. Growth and dealing with the infrastructure. Dealing with child care. Dealing with, just dealing with the issues that we have in our community. If we respect that every community has similar issues but different issues, and we can work through those issues. So, Tony, talking about
I'm sitting here. One other point that we as an organization plan to do in the future is having community gatherings in community centers to introduce, to educate these young men that are going into the military. Every year, several thousand kids that graduate go into the military. But what we want to do is let you know what the military life is like, what you can expect from the military while you're going in, and what you can expect once you go out. We would have an educated volunteer force in the military, and that's going to be an important part for you being a good person while in the military, but transitioning from the military, should you choose, back into the civil life, you're going to have something to add to the community. And that training that we got just makes us incredible employees and employable. And so that's one of the things that we want to do in the community with our organization. Of course, the big thing, of course, is the memorial, but we want to get those young guys that are just graduating high school or considering going into the military, here's an opportunity. Let me tell you what the life in the military is going to be like, and how you can maneuver it, and what you can expect before you go in, while you're in, and especially once you get out. You know, that's an important part, and we want to be a part of that community. You know, that way, not only we're going to get a better group of people coming into the military, and we may even change the mind of a few people that are out there that are on the borderline, that are possibly considering in the military lifestyle but not quite sure, and those that aren't, shall we say, college material, you know. And everybody doesn't have to be, you know, there are great technical schools and all of that. And so that's the kind of stuff we want to share with those guys when they're coming, saying, you know, I'm considering going into the military. You know, well, let me tell you about the military. Let me tell you what is going to be, what you're going to experience while going into the military, what you're going to experience while you're in there, and once you transition out, this is what you can expect.
I love that. Because one of the things that was tough for me when I was in, and it took me a while to realize this, and that's what got me through it, but it's the recognition that so many people had come before me and had done the same thing, and if they could do it, and I can do it too.
Yeah, right.
But when I'm over there getting smoked, I came in through Fort Benning, so when I'm getting smoked on Sand Hill, and like, man, did I make the right decision? Knowing that so many millions of people had done this before made it much more easier for me to digest it and to go through.
And now we do a little bit more than just talk about the military. We talk about things we're gonna do in the community today. One of the things that we are planning to do, and I got to take it before the membership meeting this next Saturday, is that we want to reactivate the Veteran Odd Job Service, and we're going to reactivate it with 5 new divisions. Now there are car care. You know, we're going to be able to provide car care for basically $60 a month, 2 times coming to your house, and yard care. For $80 a month, the yard can't be no bigger than my yard, though. Then we're going to be doing demolition and construction cleanups, and moving and transportation, turnkey and home cleaning. We have to provide jobs for the homeless, for people that are homeless. These are day labor jobs. We will be able to pay the individual at the end of the day so that they will have money to eat, and you know, if they stay with the program long enough, they will actually have enough money income to pay for rent. If we're gonna get people to overcome, I am sorry about the VA, and I apologize for it all the time because I worked out there and I tried to do a lot to change what they were doing. And you know, I want to shout out to some of the good employees out there. They're still trying to do good work, but you know, the homeless problem is growing in Atlanta, and we need to do something about it. You know, I didn't grow up in Atlanta seeing no homeless veterans, and I don't want to see them now because I think about, I was wounded in combat and somebody drove me to safety. I don't know who it was, but it could be somebody that's homeless. You know, so I want to make sure that we can overcome this homeless situation, and we're going to be doing it with the Veterans Odd Job Service. We'll start taking. Now this is in conjunction with Concerned Black Clergy Veteran Affairs Committee, which me and Tony chair. You know, and then we want people to know that we got some community service options open right now. If you want to do volunteer service in the community, you can come up to our office at 3707 Main Street in College Park. 3 days a week, we'll be taking people that are looking for a community service option. And now we got something for the businesses like veterans, and I got this approved at the last monthly membership meeting, Veterans in Service to the USA. What this is a fundraiser for Vietnam Veterans of America, but it also helps businesses in the community. Any business in the community, it's the ERC, Employee Retention Credit, that was created with the CARES Act. Now, a lot of companies got the PPP, but you can still get this. This is actually a tax refund through the IRS. We can help businesses that got 5 or more W-2 employees get this money. They can get up to $10,000 per employee and more in some cases. So we're doing this right now for the community, for the businesses. And now we got the other part that we have going on is the men's health medical consultations. This is a business that's owned and operated by a 100% disabled veteran. And it's hooked up with the VA and is actually in 26 states. So men's health care is a big issue, and it's a bigger issue because I hate to say this, brother, but most of the time we go to the doctor, we're on a gunny. we don't take care of our health the way we need to take care of our health, and that's a cost to our families. So we need to make sure that we are getting the health care. Now VA does pretty good if you pursue them. You got to keep your appointments, and this brother works with the VA to make sure that you're getting the medications that you need. He just wanted to get it through his company and he's one of our sponsors. So we just want to say that we are working in the community. We're in service to the community in a lot of different ways, not just trying to help veterans, but trying to help the community in ways to get resources like this. This program, Veterans in Service to the USA, is a hookup with Bottom Line Concept, which is a contractor with the IRS. They actually contract with the IRS to help businesses get money. So we are actually a referral partner, so we can refer these to them. There's no cost involved to the businesses. There's no cost, out-of-pocket cost. So any business with a 5 or more, and you can't have over 500 employees. This is for small businesses in the community, which we know a lot of small businesses in Atlanta don't even know about the program. So we're trying to get this money for the community. So Tony, talk about our project, man.
Yeah, our big project that we're doing, of course, is the memorial in Piedmont Park. That's the biggie right now. We have gotten a lot further than we had originally imagined with all the challenges with licensing and authorizations and everything. But of course, the major thing, of course, is fundraising. And the big thing we're doing is raising money to build this memorial. One of the ways we're doing that is, of course, selling commemorative brick. We're encouraging veterans, not just Vietnam veterans, but veterans in the metropolitan Atlanta area or anywhere to actually purchase a commemorative brick and put either their personal name on it or a family member. Because once you do that, that brick will become a permanent part of that memorial, and your name or your family member's name or even an organization will become a permanent member of the Sons of Atlanta Vietnam Memorial that's located in historic Piedmont Park. We have an incredible location. The description that they give for the location is on the front lawn, which is located on Piedmont Road. Our location is basically between 12th and 14th Street. It's not far from the entrance of 14th Street. And that's where that particular memorial, open air memorial, available to everybody, anytime, all of the time, will be built in that area. And so we're encouraging veterans, business organizations,
in schools.
Particularly in schools.
Yes.
Because a lot of us came from schools.
Actually, there were 5 from Washington High School, my high school, Turner High School, Carver High School, Howard High School, Douglas High School. All these high schools that have Carver have never been recognized. Their services have never been recognized. So I'm knocking on. Well, I'm actually with the junior ROTC units, and I've actually talked with people at my alma mater, Washington High, and they're gonna support the project. So we're asking the high school alumni to look at go to the website, look at the faces. You're gonna recognize some of these names. Some of the families are still here in Atlanta. There's sonsofatlanta.org, sonsofatlanta.org. Just go there right now. You can buy a brick 24/7, or you can make a donation. If you don't want to buy a brick, you can just make a donation, help us do this project. Now, I want to say something to all of the veterans in this region. if we got every veteran in Fulton County to buy a brick, we would have more money than we need without the rest of the community contributing down. There are over 40,000 veterans in the county. The workforce in Metro Atlanta, you got probably about any given day about 20,000 veterans working in the city of Atlanta. You know, because some of them coming from in and out of Atlanta. This is about, it's about the community, but it's more about putting value on our military service. You know, because this represents what we have given to our community. You know, these guys made the ultimate sacrifice. They should never be forgotten. Yeah. And I want to say this to Washington High. This memorial is about 50 feet from Booker T. Washington Memorial. I had to get that in there. I had to get that in there because I know how the Bulldogs feel about this. And so we just want the community involved with it. And it's a call to unity because we got 9 cities that have probably never did anything together. It's going to be doing this memorial together. And that's coming from every diversity. You know, you got, we actually got Native Americans on the memorial. We actually got, naturally we got more white people on the memorial. But you got, you look at the demographics of what we did. Atlanta, the last major city in the country to do this. The last major city. We had more kills than anybody in the state. Not now another city had more kills than Atlanta. I mean, now Columbus had a bunch of them. Macon had a lot of them. Rome, you know, those cities, Savannah. But our list is just humongous for us to be the last city in the state. Now, I want to say this to all the political thinkers. Barack signed a proclamation that provoked this memorial in 2012. This is the only executive order that Donald Trump also signed in 2017 to honor our generation of servants who I was spit on coming back from Vietnam because it was a controversial war. But I didn't start it. I just fought it. You know, none of these people that we're talking about started the war. They was citizens that went to fight the war. And they paid the ultimate price. We should not let that be forgotten, especially in a city that's too busy to hate. You know, and Atlanta is doing more than any other city has done because we are making it a call to unity for all of our communities to come together and work on the problems that we have in the community in these guys' spirit of service. So, sonsofAtlanta.org.
Yeah.
SonsofAtlanta.org.
Yeah.
Right. Councilman, I want to ask you something about, now, I'm a preacher too, I got a lot of problems with the way some organizations are approaching the homeless issue in Atlanta. I was at a couple of city council meetings where somebody was getting $25 million for homeless programs to work with homeless people. I think this should be moved to the faith-based community. The faith-based community. Why? I don't think they will be looking at the bottom line. You know, they'll be looking at saving souls, helping people overcome this issue. The VA put a lot of money in it. That money should be coming to the faith-based community. We can make sure that it's coming to the faith. Atlanta put a lot of money in it. The mayor said he had $25 million for a homeless program. Why are we giving it to the same organizations and the results are we getting, the population is growing? We have to change our approach to dealing with the homeless problem. You know, we really got to change it because the profit motive is not allowing them to be effective because I know, well, I'm a bureaucrat too. I'm a Mercer University bureaucrat. But anyway, I watch the VA put out the per diem program every year. and I watch how those programs that they give the money to works. I watch Salvation. I've tried to give people go to Salvation Army. Well, they get put out, a gateway get put out in the morning. So where's the case management? Where is the issue to help the people that got the problem?
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you're gonna put them in the streets in the daytime, how you really helping them overcome that problem?
Mm-hmm.
We need to put this in the church hands, and you know that's why we're as concerned black clergy
mm-hmm.
trying to get the church to understand this is your role.
Mm-hmm.
You know, to help this issue and then we got to speak up more about the violence in our community from the church perspective,
mm-hmm.
because it's our problem in our community. I know when I'm preaching to the people in the pews. They got children that's doing this stuff. They got children doing it. You know, we don't hear nothing about them doing it till one of them is killed.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know, we got to start preaching the gospel to people that got these problems. These problems are too much for the government to keep doing the way they are doing it. So I'm just throwing that at you,
No.
because I know where your heart is because of your background.
Yeah. I will say, I think it's a yes and situation versus an either or. I do think that there's more that the city can do and more that the state can do, but I think you're absolutely right that our faith communities are critical partners in this work, as they've been historically. And I think you've seen that in the mayor's call to work with our faith communities and try to redevelop some of our church-owned properties for housing, for affordable housing. I see that similarly with the possibility for new and more robust services to be able to be provided to folks that are in need. One of the biggest challenges that we have as a city is that to your point, the case management system that we have isn't sufficient, and to really get people to feel comfortable with you enough to move into supportive housing, to get off the streets, is that you got to build trust. And the fact that our system is so fractured, and the fact that we have on one hand we have caseworkers going out into the encampments to try to build relationships, and then you have another arm that goes out to clear the encampments, and then you lose that trust that you build. And so I think that we do need to revisit, because the system that we have in place today has been in place since the Olympics, and it's almost 30 years old. So, you know, let's take a step back and revisit how we should do it. What are other cities doing to figure out how we can make this a better system for everyone? But you're right, the faith communities are a big part of that, especially since where a lot of our homeless are able to get fed, to be sheltered, are part of our faith communities, particularly ones downtown that have been doing this work for decades. But we have to make sure that, to your point, the monies that we are bringing into our city that are supposed to go to the people that we're supposed to be helping, we gotta make sure that there's accountability there. Because if we're giving $25 million to the same old organizations, let's put metrics and KPIs and make sure that the outcomes that we've given to them are being met. I do know, in speaking with some of the homeless providers, that some of the challenges that they're facing are related to everything from, they might get people off the street today, but a bus might show up from Greyhound with folks from other communities, because Birmingham doesn't want to deal with it, Cartersville doesn't want to deal with it, Macon doesn't want to deal with it, and a lot of those folks in Atlanta, because we do have more services available. And so it's almost kind of a whack-a-mole situation, because it takes time and years to build enough trust to get someone off the streets into supportive housing, get them cleaned up, get them a job, get them a place that they can rent on their own or buy on their own. That's a 3 to 4 to 5 year process. But then we have folks that are coming from everywhere else to Atlanta to try to get the same help. So we got to scale up what we're doing, and the best way to do that is to use the infrastructure that's already there, and that means working with our faith communities who've been doing this work and who are trying to figure out how to stay relevant and stay active in communities that are rapidly changing, rapidly gentrifying, but still offer a lot to our communities. So we're still figuring it out. I don't have the answer, but I've been so interested in trying to find that answer. And as a newly elected council person, campaigning on this issue, I thought it was one thing, and then you get into the office and you learn so much more about how the ecosystem is built, how it works, what's been working, what hasn't been, and how far we come. I think we lose sight of that as well, is that we know things aren't working well today, but in conversations I've had with folks who've been practitioners of this work for years, it's been interesting to hear their horror stories of where things used to be in terms of organizations not talking to each other, being in competition with each other for funding, and we're not having one common framework on how we deliver services. Now, granted, like I said, it's not working the way it should be, but I think that we have a much stronger framework today than we may have had 10, 20, 30 years ago. But to your point, you brought up Salvation Army. One of the challenges that we also have is that different shelters, different partners have different standards of what services or what degree of care they provide for folks. You got a lot of shelters that, to your point, as soon as it's daybreak, you got to go. You can't come back here until even time. And especially when you have homeless families, especially when you have folks who have mental health challenges, they need to be somewhere with a roof over their head and feel safe. It's very disruptive. And so I think some of our partners have figured out a positive way forward, but I think we have to do some education and some retraining of some of our partners that have been part of the ecosystem for a while that also need to know, okay, maybe what you've been doing, maybe not the best practice. Let's think about ways that we can do things a little bit differently. I would tell you, I was in Kansas City just last week for a conference, for National League of Cities conference, and I visited an organization called Veteran Communities Partnership. They're going to kill me because I had such a great conversation with them. I met their founders, and essentially they acquired about 3 to 4 acres of land and built a tiny home village for veterans. And I know there's a lot of controversy about tiny homes and that they'll truly address the affordable housing issue that we have. But what's unique about this is that it is trauma-informed housing that they build. So instead of having windows, you can't see into your neighbor's cottage next door. You have the bed faces towards the door. So because if you're suffering from PTSD, it tries to help alleviate some of those challenges that make it hard for you to be able to stay in group housing. Because that's one of the things that they realized a lot of veterans that they were working with could not survive in some of the group environments that were out there because you're always looking over your back, looking over your shoulder, and it's hard to build trust and build relationships. So that's how this model started. But then they have a community center on site where they have job training, where they have resources. They have a place for you to be able to clean and wash your dog. They have all these different things that regular homeless facilities aren't offering our regular homeless population. So considering there's a lot more money for veteran and homeless services right now, that's why I go back to my comment before, like, let's do a better job of identifying those veterans and who qualify for these additional benefits and leverage those specific funding streams that are out there so to get them off the streets first. Because if you get them off the streets with that specific funding, then the regular ecosystem, you reduce you open up capacity for other folks who may not have served in the military but still suffering from other issues, and it helps make it a more robust system. But let's take some of these lessons learned from some of the other cities, bring them here to Atlanta, and do it the right way. But you're absolutely right. The faith community is a big part of that, and it has to be a big partner in that. And I want to make sure that not only are we talking about working with faith communities for affordable housing, but homeless services as well, because it's absolutely critical that we get it right. That's the cradle of the civil rights movement. Atlanta needs to get it right.
Yeah.
Now, one of the things that always bugged me with veteran homelessness is that we haven't stepped up to the one entity that has the solution for that. That's the VA. Every veteran, not one veteran, every veteran who finished a good tour of military service is able to buy a house with no money down. I
was one of those veterans.
Why don't we tweak that system? That system can be tweaked. Give this veteran a sense of belonging. Give him his own home. But you got to have case management there. You got to have counseling there, which we got that fast. That's what happens when you're having a good time. So, Councilman, we got to do this again. We got to do this again because we got to connect the dots. We have to connect the dots, and I think we connect them first by conversation, having dialogue in the community. Then we can start moving on, plans to change tweak some of the things. The VA should be tweaked to help overcome the homelessness, and it has the resources, And we need the legislative will in places to do this, because I know this for a fact. I have used veteran benefits, got a guy off the street, got him in his home. He got his family back, and he died because of Agent Orange related illnesses. But I've always wondered, why do we go through all this stuff with veterans when they got a benefit? Let's get the benefit to them, so that will make them feel a sense of belonging. You know, you got to give people motivation and encouragements to overcome issues, and we can do it. So thank you.
Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, thank you for doing this.
All.
You know, so now we know that we got some people in the city. So got veterans in the city. Yeah. You know, and I'm looking at Michael got some veterans working in his office, so we hoping that we're gonna saturate the city with veterans.
Yes,
so we can get some stuff done.
Absolutely, and this is for me to keep right here. Okay,
that's for you to keep. Thank you.
Perfect.
Next week, Tony closes out.
Okay. Next week, same time. Here on Lyve TV, you can come watch veterans talk about things that veterans are dealing with. As you've seen in this show today, we have several topics that we will cover, are covering, and will continue to cover. So next week, 4 o'clock, right here, same time. Veterans Talk.
That's right. Veterans talking to veterans and the